So, David, last week, just before you told us about your erectile dysfunction, you were talking about the Nikon Z. Was it the Z3?
No, that's completely and utterly inaccurate from start to finish. I don't remember telling you about that. Yes, I might be thinking about it, but no, I wasn't. Didn't tell you about it. And it was the Canon C400 that I was telling you about.
Oh no, I'm talking
What?
about off camera. I'm talking about the new Nikon that's come out.
What is it? What is it called?
Is it the Z3?
No,
What's it called?
is it not the Z6 Mark III?
Well, I was half right.
Sorry, just couldn't contain what you said. So, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. What did you call the camera again? The
The
first bit, the make of it, the make of it.
Nikon.
Nikon. Is it not a Nikon?
I think it's like potato sort of
So
situation.
what? So what would you say then? Potato or potato?
Potato,
Tomato or tomato?
tomato.
How long's this been happening?
Do you know what I did say the other day? I was speaking to my mom, and I said gas station. That was a pretty bad one. I said to her, I went and got some gas on the way home from the grocery store.
No, gas is something that you have in your house or you produce through your backside.
Yeah, I am
At
inclined
least
to
that,
agree. Yeah, I know what I'm
at least
doing.
that makes sense. It's gasoline they put in the car.
Yeah,
So they don't put petroleum in the car over there. They put gasoline. We put petroleum in our cars in England. Petrol, gas. So it kind of makes sense.
yeah.
So it's a gas station, like we have a petrol station. We don't call it a petroleum station, even though that actually sounds quite cool.
But it is as well. I found at home. It's sort of like, what is it, like 50-50 between diesel and petrol, more towards petrol now. Whereas over here, they have diesel, but it's way less. It's like, say, like 10-20%.
What do you mean only 10-20% of people have a diesel car?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not really a thing as much as it is at home.
Yes, yeah, they like big. Well, petrol engines they combust quicker and with more dramatic effects, so you get faster cars. The petrol car, and that's what America like, don't they? They like that big engine kind of thing. We're over here, we're kind of all right, we don't have anything to prove. We just totter around our little country roads and we're fine. And our little 1.2 engines in America, you need a 4.2. When I say America, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but I imagine it's kind of North American thing. They want the big, but also, don't you guys? You don't have an MOT, is that right?
No, there's no MOTs. You can drive it around until it dies without any issue. I've seen so many cars here that are in such poor states, just like driving around with like cracked windshields and stuff like that, where that stuff just wouldn't fly at home. I think you can get pulled for that here, but it's way less. I've heard anecdotally from people that if you're driving around with a cracked windscreen and stuff, you can technically get done for it, but it's not like in the UK where I wouldn't drive around with a cracked windscreen in the UK because you would get pulled straight away. I mean, I wouldn't drive around with a cracked windscreen anyway, but you're way less likely to encounter issues over here with that.
Yeah, it's illegal in the UK. I mean, it's put into place. Some people say it's a money making thing, but a lot of people say it's for safety to make sure the vehicles are safe and roadworthy, so it eliminates the potential for crashes.
Well, if the glass shatters all over you when you're driving, and wherever you could be on the motorway. But what if that injures you or something and you fly off the road? So I'm inclined to agree with it being
Hitting somebody
illegal.
else, you
Yeah,
can't see what
it's
you're doing, and then you crash into someone else and kill them or something along those lines. Yeah.
but
Um.
wait, well, before we
Yeah.
move on, one thing that I do find interesting about over here compared to at home, you have to park with the traffic here, and that is technically illegality in the UK as well. You are supposed to do that in the UK, but I've never heard of it being enforced by any police officer. Whereas over here, I know a few. So like
What does it mean?
say it's like a one-way road, or it applies to any road. So you have to park with the flow of traffic. So if the traffic's moving, say you're on the right-hand side of the road and it's moving down, you got to park with whatever direction the traffic's moving.
Right, yeah, yeah, I get you. I
That
get
makes
you.
sense.
So you're not gonna like, yeah. So even if cars going that way and this way,
Yeah.
If you're going this way, you have to pull it on that side.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so all the cars are facing the same direction on either side of the road. I mean, opposite side on the opposite sides.
I never thought about that before. Yeah, I never thought about it.
But yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what the deal is. If that's, I don't know. Probably
well,
should. I do
it
drive.
is.
I've had a license for a while.
It's a legal requirement in the UK, but it's not enforced. I mean, I've never heard of anyone being done for that. But one of our friends, Josh, when he passed his test, he was telling me about that, and his driving instructor was telling him that it's a legal requirement, and he actually is the only person I know who actually abides by that in the
I'm
UK.
glad you've shared it though. I'm glad you've shared it.
Just in case anyone ever comes over it, and they just don't want them to get into trouble.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. All right then. This Nikon. Right. Let's talk about that. So last week we talked about the Canon C400. It's a great camera. It's got lots of great features on it, but I said that as a Sony user, there's not enough about it. There's no reason really. There's nothing to draw me away from what I've currently got with my current E-mount lenses and my Sony FX6, etc., to make me jump ship and go to Canon and start again and sell all my lenses and buy them all for this new Canon C400. It is a good camera, but there isn't enough about it to make me want to swap. And that's something that is the kind of camera style that I gravitate to for the work that I do. You said at the time the C400, it doesn't really suit your needs. You shoot predominantly weddings. But the new Nikon camera that's just come out, it's a 6K sensor. It's like a partially stacked CMOS sensor to keep costs down. It can do photography as well. It's got 12-bit RAW in a mirrorless body. So really, Tom, if there's a camera that's going to catch your attention, especially because I think it's $2,500, this is more likely to be something that you'd be interested in. So are you?
No, for two reasons. And I'll tell you what they are now. So the two separate reasons that I wouldn't pick up this camera, or I wouldn't change from my Sony camera, is the first one is the image stabilization on the video side of things. When you're using the stabilization on this camera, you've got to crop in a little bit, and it looks fairly significant watching a couple of videos on it. And I think that would be something that wouldn't really interest me, having to go in and like do the image stabilization in DaVinci for each individual shot. Because when you're shooting a wedding, you've got like, I don't know, like 500-600 gigabytes worth of footage and loads of different individual shots. It would just be a bit of a pain and quite a strain on my workflow to do that. And the Sony does it perfectly. I don't have any kind of issue with image stabilization with the A7 IV.
On active mode, it does have a crop.
I don't use active mode.
So you just use what is it? What is it? Is it no stabilization, active stabilization?
Yeah, and the normal stabilization and off are the same. There's no crop, and I use that and I get away with that fine. So I don't have any issues with my A7S III or with the A7 IV with that. So that's one issue. That's the smaller of the two issues because I do use a gimbal for a day.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit first. How much of a crop is it?
I'm not quite sure on the actual detail. I'm sure did Gerald Dunn say it was like 20% or something like that. It was quite significant though. It was a good like jump. I watched the video a couple of hours ago, and it was when I looked at it, I thought to myself, "Oh, that is quite significant of a zoom on there." And I'm often in quite tight situations at weddings where I don't think I'd be able to deal with that. Or then I was thinking you could always buy like a lens that's a bit more zoomed out, or you could switch to a zoomed out lens. And then I'm thinking, well, what am I really changing my workflow for to use this camera? What benefits am I going to get versus what are the drawbacks for it? And I think I would end up with maybe a nicer image at the end of the day, but then we can debate that with the dynamic range issues that it's got compared to the Sony cameras. So maybe.
All right. Sorry to interrupt you there, Tom. Before we go on to that, has it got something? What point axis stabilization does it have? I think the Sony's have 5. Does this not have 8?
Does it have 8?
Don't know. Asking you.
You're asking about the Nikon camera?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think the Sony's have 5 points axis stabilization. And I don't know how and when that comes into effect. I think the active mode is a digital stabilization, maybe, rather than a stabilization.
So the Nikon is a 5-axis stabilization, so it's the same as the Sony's.
But it's got a crop as well.
Yeah.
And also as well, 120 frames at 4K, it crops down to the equivalent of an APS-C.
Yeah.
So if it's already cropping down to a 1.5 times, I wonder if then it's got a further 20% crop on the 1.5 times, which means if that's the case, you kind of at like 120 frames FX30 kind of standard, where it's super tight, super zoomed in.
Whereas obviously I can do, with the A7S at least, I can do 120 frames of full frame. So it's a little bit better on that aspect as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think that you made a good point. What was your other point?
My other point is that it's was it 24 megapixel camera sensor? So that this leans more into the photography side of things. Now, if you'd have asked me a couple of years ago, I would have said 24 frames is enough for photography. But I've grown accustomed to higher megapixels now, so I think my workflow would struggle a little bit if I had to move back to a 24 megapixel sensor. The last time I actually had a 24 megapixel sensor was back in the good old Canon 80D days. And I've used a friend's camera when I was doing some photography a couple of weeks ago, and it was a 24 frame sensor. And that when I was editing the photos, I found issues with the crop factor. I just couldn't. There wasn't enough room, enough leeway. And I know you don't really do photography as much, so you might not be as familiar with this. But with my 33 megapixel sensor now, I can always just crop in, or I can change the composition of an image later. So it's always that safety as well. And if you're doing anything like me, like I've shifted from doing just wedding videos to I do photography and video for weddings equally now, and I sell custom packages, which is both. So it's just as important for me to have a good photography camera, and I would say I would struggle to go back to a 24 megapixel sensor these days for that.
What was the megapixel count on the A7 III?
33. Oh, the A7
The
III.
A7 III.
The 3, yeah, it's 24.
So that would have been the last time you probably used. Did you have one of them?
No, I've never had an A7 III.
Oh, right, I thought you did.
No, I think I had 80D, then A7R2, A7R3, A7 IV, A7S3.
Do you know what as well? If the camera, if that's the sensor on that Nikon, what is it like in low light?
Well, it'll be a little bit better than the A7 IV in low light because it's got a lower megapixel count, but then it wouldn't be as good as an A7S3 because that's only 12 megapixels.
But the A7 IV has a second base ISO of 3200. Does that have a second base ISO?
The 6.3, the Nikon.
The Nikon.
It does, but the video that I watched, they haven't disclosed it in the Gerald Undone video that I watched on it, and he said he suspected it was 50,000 because that was when it cleaned up.
50,000.
I mean,
50,000.
5,000. 5,000, sorry.
5,000.
Not 50,000.
It depends what the dynamic range is like at that figure, because that's pretty good. If that's its second base ISO at 5,000, that's pretty good. If you get a good image from it, and if you get a clean dynamic range, and if it isn't massively different than what's the base ISO, 800?
Yeah, I believe so. 800.
Right, yeah. So if that's the case, then if you can go, so what you're right, okay, the camera that you probably, from the Sony perspective, the camera that you probably have to compare it to is the A7 IV, because the A7S III will outperform it in video, but not in photography.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it would be more suited to. This is a competitor to the A7 IV, I believe, but it does it with the A7 IV. I think it's got a good balance between video and photo, whereas I feel like the Z6 III is leaning more towards video in what it can do. With obviously with the RAW capabilities, with the different ProRes codecs that you have access to now, with the 6K downsampling stuff like that. It's leaning more towards video than the A7 IV, but then I would say the A7 IV is leaning not towards more photography. I think it's just more well balanced.
Because it's a 6K sensor as well versus a 4K sensor. So yeah, I agree actually. I think if you are predominantly video, and you do some photography, then it's not a bad purchase because of all the flexibility of the RAW workflow. And it's a 6K camera, which kind of puts it in the same kind of video category as the Blackmagic Pocket 6K camera.
But with good autofocus.
Yeah, and better battery life and photography on it as well. So it's actually a better camera. So if you want to put it against the Blackmagic 6K full frame, it might be a better camera to have for a content creator.
Yeah.
Might be a better camera overall because with the Blackmagic championed itself on its video quality. Also as well, that's not great in low light, that camera. It might be a better camera than that. So if you were a Blackmagic shooter, you might consider moving over to this camera. But if you've got an A7 IV and you're kind of a balanced, I do photography and I do video, you're probably best sticking with that. If you're into documentary and things like I am, you probably want additional features like your variable NDs and your built-in XLR cables and your time code and SDI and all these other features. So you're probably not going to move away to it. So and Canon in that kind of market, they've got the R5C. What is a camera that no one seems to talk about anymore? It's an 8K camera. It shoots 12-bit internal RAW. It's got the RF mount on it. The battery life on it is a joke for the battery that you get with it. You certainly need some kind of external power. And I think it's a 50 megapixel photography camera. So it's a bit of a beast, but for some reason, it actually outperforms this new Nikon. But for some reason, no one talks about that Canon, the R5C, and now I bet the R5C is comparable
to this camera
price to I bet it is.
So go on, sorry.
No, it just makes you think that like when you start, because there's no perfect camera in my opinion. Some cameras I've got the edge on other cameras, and then the next camera's got the edge on that camera, and it's just about what you believe what you do will suit you and your workflow the best, really.
So the EOS R5C mirrorless camera is currently up for $3,600 US. So that's $1,100 more than the Z6
Does that the Z6? Yeah. Well, yeah, slightly more expensive. Yeah, but is it a better camera?
But you're getting, by the looks of things, you're getting double the megapixels. So for me, that would be quite crucial. You're getting 8K into the 6K. You're getting Canon color science, but then I've heard the differences are negligible at this point, and I've heard Gerald & Dunn says that the Z6 III has the best color science at the moment. So you got that as well.
Potentially, without going to like the red cameras and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. But again, I honestly, I think right where we are right now in 2024, it's hard to talk about things like color science because if you're shooting in log or you're shooting in raw and you know to expose, you know to white balance, you can get a great image out of all these cameras, out of your Sony cameras, out your Canon, Nikons, your Panasonic cameras. You can get a fantastic image out of all. You can. Once upon a time, not long ago, there was a drastic difference between what Sony was doing versus what Canon was doing. You could see they had very different color sciences. It's just which one you preferred. And usually most people would lean towards Canon because they were more true to life. Here's a question for you then, because we're kind of like whittling it down between is it better or worse than? What about the R5C versus the A7 IV?
That's a lot more interesting. That's I don't know, if you're factoring in price, then the A7 IV would probably outcompete it, in my opinion, because it's a way cheaper camera. I mean, you get more for your money. You could buy a lens as well. Depends on who you are, doesn't it? If you've got unlimited budget, you can spend whatever you want, or are you factoring in cost into this as well? Because if they were the same price, then you'd probably lean towards the R5C.
The R5C has two different menus on it. It's got a photography menu and a cinematic menu as well. To really try and champion itself as the ultimate dual camera that does genuine photography and genuine video as well. It's more money. The one other thing where the Canon R5C is slightly beaten by the A7 IV is it doesn't have image stabilization.
Another crucial aspect.
Again, it depends on who you are. A lot of all cinema cameras don't have. Although Sony Burano does, which seems to crop up in conversation quite frequently between us. But like the FX6 and the C70 and all them, they don't have IBIS.
Yeah.
The first cinema camera with IBIS is the Sony Burano, as far as I'm aware. Some of them have digital stabilization, like the C70, and you can do things like catalyst browns with your Sony cameras to stabilize in post, but it's not IBIS. IBIS is a physical thing to what connects to the sensor.
But
I
then,
don't know why people don't talk about the R5C more.
well, an issue with an R5C is the video overheating as well. I'm seeing a lot of people saying that it's going to overheat within 30 minutes.
That's not that. That's the R5.
Are you sure? I'm seeing R5C on here.
The R5C's got they brought it out pretty much to clap back against that. They put the fan in it. The R5 was an amazing photography camera. It was like 50 odd whatever megapixel sensor. It had the 8K capabilities, but you'd be lucky to get like 30 minutes out of it because it would overheat because it was too powerful for the actual body, especially that fan. So then I don't know, 8 months later, they brought the R5C out with the C, obviously putting it part of the cinema line. And they put in the built-in fan, so it's a bit chunkier, but it's got a fan in it, and that was to counter what was going on. The R5 on paper was a fantastic camera, but for the practicality of it was missing the fan.
Yeah.
It's just too powerful for that little body. Even now, the downside with the R5 is it's a camera what they're selling what isn't suitable for its full abilities unless you add things to it. You need to add additional power to it, otherwise you can't get its full capabilities. And the other thing as well with the R5C, shooting in 8K might sound good, shooting 8K raw, but it absolutely hammers through your cards for data, and it's going to, unless you've got a complete beast of a post-production edit system, it's going to be a nightmare to edit. It's the codecs on it is not as smooth as say like an R3D file where you can edit it much better. It will drive you mad how sluggish it is.
Well, I think the problem, especially with like my workflow, would be I'd have to move to way more expensive 4 terabyte drives and stuff if you're going to be editing something like that. Because these drives that I use are only 2 terabytes a piece, so I have multiple projects going at the same time. So you're either going to have to start. I'd have to start splitting projects between different SSDs, or I'd have to upgrade the SSD workflow. And it's not just that, you're going to be upgrading your cards as well. You're going to need more cards. If you're doing what I do, I shoot dual record, so I have to have 2 cards going at the same time for every single shoot that I do, just because I don't want to take risks with, say, like a wedding not being backed up properly or anything like that. So it's going to be a significant cost to your workflow as well, and the camera's $1,000 more than an A7 IV or the Z6 III.
And you know what'll happen is most people wouldn't buy more cards or upgrade the post-production edit software and all that. They just use it and shoot in 4K.
And then at that point, why have you gone for it? Because that's one of the major points of getting it.
I believe you would, because it would just get too much. It would just get too demanding, and you'd say to yourself, "I can still do my job effectively and get a really nice image out of it, and my workflow can be way superior if I shoot in 4K, and it's still going to look good."
And then the other thing that sounds good but could be an issue as well is that 50 megapixel sensor. Now, I know I spoke before about 24 being not enough, But then I also had some time using the 60 megapixel sensor on the A7R4, and that was way too much overkill. And I even think, because I used to own an A7R3, I even thought 42 megapixels was a bit too much because your file sizes are huge. And when you're editing these photos in Lightroom, it's only a slight delay on the lag time with the M1 MacBook Pro that I was using at the time. It's only slightly laggy, but it adds up and it can be a little bit frustrating to work with. And I find myself cropping in not as like I don't need it as much. I found the A7 IV to be the sweet spot at 33 megapixels, where your file sizes aren't huge, but you do have that room to maneuver that you wouldn't get with a 24.
And you know what? That's what it's all about. That is literally what it's about. It's about what suits your workflow.
Yeah.
What is, again, and I've described before, a camera is your companion, it's your buddy that's out with you on a shoot, and you want it to be reliable, and you want it to do all the things that you want it to do successfully without any issue. You want, decent dynamic range. You want good autofocus. You want all these different things, and it will get to the point where you realize that you will sacrifice 4K, 8K for 4K for all the other great features that it has to get you through the shoot that you need to get through. Again, that's why the Canon C400 wasn't enough of a camera to draw me away from my FX6. And to be honest, there is nothing currently on the market that would. And that's not me as a Sony fanboy. It's just because why would it when my FX6 can do everything I want it to do and it's so reliable? Which leads me to the next question, and we're both shooting different kind of things, and some things cross over. What would it take for what feature or what about a camera to make you leave your current system and think to yourself, I need that camera. That camera is just will improve my work or workflow, whatever. What would it need?
There's nothing really in my workflow at the minute that is so compelling where I feel like I need to upgrade my camera. There's nothing that I use my camera at the minute where I think, God, my life would be so much easier if I had this or that. But if I had to pick some things, I'd like to have time code. I think that would be quite nice to have. I can get away with doing audio syncs at the minute. I've not really encountered an issue with that, but it would be just easier with time code. And then another thing would be having internal ND filters on, say, a Sony A7 IV type body, a small camera body. I think something like that would be quite a big draw for me to be pulled in by, or something like what the Z6 III is offering with RAW, something like that. That would be a bit of a dangling carrot for me to switch over and potentially move systems for, but it would have to be a lot.
So effectively, you need an FX6 and FX3 body.
Yeah, I mean, like we've discussed this before. I think I could get away with having an FX6, but the issues that you've got is it's like double the price for a start, so it's a significant business investment. I wouldn't get as much for my A7S III or my A7 IV as what I bought them for, so I'd be losing money just selling those anyway, or I'd be investing that full amount into getting the third camera. And then I'd have the issue, like you said, you put it on gimbals and stuff, whereas I think that is possible, but I don't imagine it's as quick as I can do it with my A7S III. I think I'd have to spend a bit more time fiddling about with it, trying to get it to balance properly. And I think with these weddings, it's so fast paced that you have to be ready to just rig the gimbal up and go within 10 minutes. And I don't think I could spend time rigging out the FX6.
For me, I wouldn't be worried too much about that. I think you'd be able. It's when you strip it down, it's very light camera, the FX6, especially if you've got like you do, like one of the larger gimbals, you'd be fine with it. My concern would be, although you use external audio anyway, on the body itself, it's got no audio inputs, so you can't just quickly, plug something into the jack and have it recording directly into the camera. You'd need to have you need to have everything externally, or the audio externally recorded, which means you're very dependent on your time code. Because you scratch audio on the FX6, I wouldn't trust it, especially in something like a wedding where you've got music playing, you've got people talking. No doubt they can be quite loud, especially when the drinks are flowing. It wouldn't capture it, so you'd have to be dependent on a time code system between your audio system and then the camera. Otherwise, you wouldn't get a sync on it, which would be an absolute nightmare. So then you've also got to invest in a time code system to get what you could have just with your just thinking with I don't know. How would you think?
Well, it is a scenario that I've got for you. Whenever I've got my one of my cameras on the gimbal, I always have a microphone on the top anyway, just plugged into the hot shoe mount. So there's all kinds of unexpected things happen at a wedding, and then usually there's some like nice reactions. You know, when the bride turns around, the bridesmaids are all there, and you get these nice reactions and like people talking to each other and stuff. I'll often include that in the wedding film. So if I was putting the FX6 on a gimbal, how would I go about doing that?
You'd have to put a top handle on.
And then would that create issues with balancing?
Yeah, I think so. The only other workaround that I can think, what you could do is like with the deity microphones. If you had them, then if you had like say the wireless pros have built-in time code and or built-in record. You can record to the actual device rather than it pass through to the camera. You'd have to plug a microphone into it what has built-in phantom power. You'd plug that microphone into your wireless pro, the receiver, which then would turn would activate the shotgun mic. So whatever's going into shotgun mic is then going into the wireless pro receiver, and then that would be time code synced to the camera.
And where would you mount the shotgun mic?
You can put it wherever.
Can you stick
You
it
can put it and
anywhere on the camera body?
yeah. Well, I wouldn't. I'd mount it to the gimbal.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Is that going to be?
There's lots of different. But
my question with that is that going to be high enough? Say for example, like you're holding the gimbal there and the camera's a bit above. Am I going to be then not getting people's audio clearly enough because I'm not pointing? Like I'd need to point the camera slightly up to get the directional mic
no,
to.
you could have a magic arm on or something like that. You could literally position the shotgun mic wherever you want. But I think the fact that I had to come up with quite an elaborate workaround, it's just not worth it.
No.
I mean, when you look at the FX3 against the FX6, apart from the ND, it's the same sensor. It's going to record the same image. It's very slightly different the way it processes it, but it's not enough for me to have such a dramatic workaround where like you said, you can plug the shotgun mic directly into the camera. A lot of them now, like the Sony ones as well, they don't need to be plugged into the camera. You put them into the hot shoe on top of the camera, and they talk to each other, so you don't need any extra cabling or anything like that. And then you can capture them kind of candid moments like you're talking about, and you don't need some elaborate workaround,
Yeah.
which is what I'm talking about. And then you can still with an FX3 still time code the actual camera to additional external mics as long as they've got time code as well. And then when you come back to post, then you can sync everything together.
So yeah, it would be quite a workaround to do something because that shot happens like it's like a safety thing. It doesn't always happen. It's not really crucial, but it's enough to warrant me needing it. So I wonder whether they could actually get NDs built in on a body like that because Magic managed to do it with their Pocket 6K. They had built-in NDs, but slightly bigger than the A7S3.
They're not electronic NDs. They're mechanical shutter NDs.
That's fine for me. I don't. I'd rather have that than not have it at all.
Yeah, they're not like the smooth, like the fine operation where you can slowly but surely dial it in and dial it down. So which means they won't have the kind of automatic variable ND, which you do get in the FX6. But again, it's all about your workflow and if you've got it on a gimbal and you're running around on it, you can put FX6 on gimbals. Lots of people do, but I don't think I would. I think something like the FX3 or I think the FX3 over the A7S3 simply because of time code. Because if you've got multiple things going on, if you've got different audio systems and they've got time code on, and your camera can have time code. If you can just have everything, you put it into post and just sync it all, boom, in a split second, everything will be perfect. There'll be no wavering or dropout or anything like that. It does the job, and it'll save you. Because well, you said you've had no problems. I edited something just today, and one was between I had a lav mic on the subject, but also I had my shotgun mic in front of my FX6. Then when I got it into post, tried to sync it via waveform, and it just couldn't. It couldn't have it. It wouldn't find it. It was ridiculous, and that was in DaVinci Resolve Studio. I've had it a few times. That's why I moved over to timecode, because I was fed up of manually syncing it, and I don't know why. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, but it's a very simple process of highlighting both things. Right click, sync by waveform, and it clip cannot be found. And the I don't know why, but yeah. So the FX6 for time, and plus the FX6, some people have got it in beta now, but it's also coming with shutter angle and quite a few different features on it. What again they're not going to give to the A7S3. Maybe for you in an ideal world, but again probably not enough to spend the difference on. It might be, say, having an A7 IV with an FX3.
What difference would that give me though over what I've got now?
Shutter angle and time code.
Well, time code wouldn't really be relevant to that because the A7 IV doesn't have time code. So what would that be time code syncing it to?
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then what?
You couldn't. Yeah, you couldn't.
So
You
what?
couldn't, you're right. Yeah.
What is like the what is the big attraction over having shutter angle to shutter speed? What's the biggest difference I'll see?
Speed and versatility.
What do you mean by that though? What
You can just in it, because like you don't have to. It just it's an automatic match. You don't have to jump through to change your frame rate to your shutter. So obviously, like you're always doubling it. It does it automatically. You can jump through it.
But you see, we spoke about this as well. With my workflow, I wouldn't see that benefit because of the way I operate the camera anyway. I have the presets sync, so if I want to do slow mo, I'll just switch
You can't change the white balance and a few other things when you do it in memory mode, in presets.
Well, I would always change, like, automatically tune the white balance anyway. You know what I mean? When I'm changing over.
If it's in when you move over to that memory save,
Yeah.
it'll save in. It'll save in what white balance was saved to it, 5,600 for example. But when you're in a new location, you might have to change the white balance, which means then you'd have to go into your presets to change it again, and that'd be far more faff than what you could just do it very easily and change your shutter with shutter angle.
So what I'm saying to you is, if I'm gonna, I always have I've got 3 presets on my S3, and they're all saved to 5,500 on the white balance, and I would always just adjust it anyway. I have like I think you call it a hotkey assigned to the white balance anyway. I used to leave them all on auto white balance because I thought that was good for a while. And I've recently got a lot more intentional with changing white balance. So each time I'll change over, I'll reset the white balance anyway. But this is the question I'll pose to you.
You can't though. You can't do that on memory mode.
Well, I'm saying that you can. I do that.
When you look at your camera, because I'm pretty confident that if you go into your preset what you've saved, it's got your shutter. It'll have probably your f-stop.
Yeah.
And it'll have your white balance. So then if you click on it, so you're in like, I don't know, memory 1, M1, whatever it is, what you've saved. Then if you click it, it'll say this function is not available on white balance.
I'm very confident it doesn't say that. I can show you it. It doesn't. I do that like regularly with the.
Go on then. In your preset. Okay. I'm very aware at this point. I could be wrong.
So you can see on there. I'll show it to the camera there first. I am in preset 1. Preset 1 on there. You see that on the dial?
Yeah.
And then I go in here, go down to white balance. Can you see that? There it is.
Yeah, you must have quickly changed it then.
No, I haven't. That's the way I work.
Well, yeah, I didn't think you could do that. So there you go. All right, okay, you don't need shutter angle.
So that's what I was going to say to you anyway, is because we just identified that shutter angle. Is that worth selling an A7S3 and spending an extra, $1,000, $2,000 on an FX3?
I don't think the $2,000 more.
How much is it?
I don't know. I don't think it's that much more. But unless you were looking to change your workflow over, then yeah, maybe not. Because the things that I do is, when I think about it, all my cameras do have time code anyway, so I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, that's true. So if I only, yeah, it's $1,300 more for an FX3 over an A7S3.
Right. Okay. If I'm not going to name our popular website, but if I look at that, I don't know if it is in British. I don't know. Well, that's like, what's that in UK still?
$1,300 is £1,022.
Exchange rates, Paul.
Yeah, it's
On the website that I go to. Well, I'll say it. Infin the UK. I don't think the discrepancy between the two cameras is that, because I remember I looked, the amount that was different was pretty much equivalent to the price of an XLR K3M.
yeah, we
And the XLR K3M, yeah, the XLR K3M is what you get with the FX3 over the A7S3, which made it a like for like equivalent in price.
yeah.
So then you look at the differences, and the difference is the features what the FX3 has over the A7S3.
So would you say if it was like £500 discrepancy, you would say it's worth the jump?
If I didn't, but again, like you the other factors that you'd have to consider is you're in the second-hand market, you're selling it, which means you're going to lose money on, because people are going to be effectively buy a second-hand A7S3 from you. So you're not going to get as much money for it. But and again, it depends what you shoot. But if you were starting from scratch and you had money but you had no cameras, or maybe, and then you looked at the FX3 versus the A7S3, and one was £500 more.
Yeah.
I personally would get the FX3 for its extra features and the XLR top handle, because that would be beneficial to me. It might not be beneficial to you.
Yeah.
But it will be beneficial to me with what I do.
I've just looked. It's £511 more in Efinity.
Yeah. So
Just
yeah.
close.
So that's yeah. So that's what I mean. Which is the price really, and they're quite hard to get. The XLR K3Ms. I did have one for a while, but obviously with going with my other cameras, and I just sold it. I didn't need it. Again, depends what you want. It allows you to get that XLR into the body of the camera through the top handle. But if you don't need that, then you don't need it.
So you're
Plus the time code, plus all the other bits, shutter angle, all the other bits to it as well.
Yeah.
All them features, what it has to me, are worth, plus the top handle with the XLRs on it, are worth that £500. But to other people, they won't, because they won't want all the different features that I've just listed.
Now, what would change the equation for me is I'm considering a third camera. I'm considering the FX30, and I think I want when I get that FX30, it'll become way more valuable to me to want to change out the A7S3 for the FX3 at that point. But I think where I am at now, as someone with the A7S3, there's no meaningful jumps for me to spend that extra money, because obviously we were talking it's an extra £500. I would end up spending a lot more than that, because I would lose money on the A7S3 on the sales side of things as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean in the second-hand market. But even if you had an FX30 and FX3 and you've got your A7 IV, you've still got your time code issue.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It would change the equation if I had an FX30 as well.
But you still couldn't, if you had an FX30 and FX3 and A7 IV, two of you three have got a time code, but the other one hasn't.
But I wouldn't be using the A7 IV for video at that point. I'd be using 2 for video, 1 for photography, because that's why I'm getting the third camera, because I'm doing a lot more weddings that are photo and video.
Yeah, you wouldn't need to sync it. So you're looking to get a second camera so you can just use the 2 for video and sync them 2, and then it goes sync the audio on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't need to. So currently you don't. Well, before when you were saying because you've got an A7 IV, it's not worth your while getting because it doesn't have time code on it for the FX3, but the FX3 wouldn't even be syncing to that anyway. It'd be syncing to the time code on the audio, what you've got, the external audio, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be. But then,
So that's the benefit of it.
yeah, so I could sync it via that. If I was using the Tascam X8, yeah, I could use it for that.
How do you sync? How are you currently syncing the A7S3 to your Tascam?
Just just with the sound waveform audio.
Right, okay. As a you might have been all right. Has there never been a point where you thought, oh no,
Nope,
like
not
I'm
so
picking up,
far.
and it's just so and it's been good enough just using the mic on the top of the camera.
Yeah, even the scratch audio mic does it. I don't feel like I need to go and throw a mic on top of it, but I usually do.
Has there ever been a point where you've what about when you stop and start the camera?
It does it for you in DaVinci. It'll if you go on create new timeline, it'll put them all in the right order anyway. That makes sense. It's an issue if you make a new clip. You know there's two ways to do it. You can make the timeline or make the clip. I have issues if I
Yeah.
make the clip where it'll just be blank spots and stuff, and it'll fill in like loads of it'll have loads of like blank gaps in the timeline and stuff. But if you create a new timeline, then it puts it all in the right order there.
I don't think I that well obviously it works for you, but I'd be worried. Um, just using certainly I'd be very worried just using scratch audio, but using just that we're just using the like sort of like a Rode shotgun or something on the camera. I think I'd be worried. I'd
But
be worried that there'd be certain points where it would where it'd be hard to get the sync. I think I'd want time code for that.
well, it's obviously it depends on what thing you're actually shooting, doesn't it? I've done I think it must be at least 150 weddings. I've not had maybe one or two where I've had to go in there and like mess it around a little bit, but it's not taking too long.
Yeah, well, obviously it works for you. I just know that I'd be worried that that what this because just the difference in volume, a wedding, and all these other factors that could come into it. I'd be worried that. Although saying that, there's only probably going to be certain key points in the wedding where you'd have the XLRs, we'd have sorry your Tascam connected, wouldn't you, during speeches and stuff? You wouldn't have it. You don't have that. You wouldn't have that going for the rest of the night, would you?
No. To be fair, no, the Tascam X8, I would leave that running for most of the night and just let it record whatever's happening in case they do more speeches. But the good thing with the X8 is it's 32-bit float audio, so you don't really get peaking. So even if they do
No,
absolutely blow out the speakers, you can still sync via audio.
no, it wasn't. It wasn't about that. It was about I'd be worried about syncing the camera off waveform at a wedding to the Tascam. But saying that in a practical world, the only time where you really need to make sure they are in sync would be during speeches because like if it's just footage later on of people dancing or before that and things like that, um, it doesn't matter.
No, I don't
It doesn't
sync
matter
that.
because there's nothing to sync.
Yeah, that stuff doesn't get isn't
Yeah,
synced anyway.
and you would expect, you'd at least hope that when the speeches are being recorded, the noise floor is low enough. Basically, people have shut the pie holes, so then your shotgun mic should be able to pick it up
Yeah.
because people aren't talking and disrupting, adding more sound onto your waveform. Basically,
Yeah,
does the new Z6 Mark III, does that have time code on it?
I think it does. Let me see. I'm sure he said it does.
I mean, the Z8 doesn't. Well, it doesn't. It doesn't. You have to get that external thing. I can't really see what call like an external thing. What does it over Bluetooth? What's more money and more faff to get on the Z8? Unless they've corrected on that. But I know quite a lot of the mirrorless bodies. They, yeah, they don't because they don't. They see it as more of a cinematic feature time code. And obviously you have to buy a time code device as well. So you're spending another 300 or 400 quid on like the deity ones like I've got are the tentacle sync tracky systems. So expensive.
Yeah, it does say it has time code. Yeah.
Be interesting though. If it says it, we'll have it. But if it's got a time code port or a port, or if it does what like the Z8 does, where it does it over like a Bluetooth thing to a Bluetooth system, what then takes a time code, then that matches whatever system you've got, like Tracky or whatever, and
Well,
that is just another pain.
what it says here at the bottom, it says that including it's also compatible with Atomos AirGlue, a Bluetooth-based timecode sync system. So does that mean it's not got internal timecode and you have to use that external
Yeah,
device, so it doesn't have timecode then?
yeah. No, it doesn't. It's a bit of a blag. It's like the Z8,
Yeah.
which is a beast of a camera. You have to buy that additional little system as well. Plus, then your timecode device to get that timecode. It's not like the FX6 or the FX3 that uses the multi-port interface to get the timecode in. It's managed to do a workaround for that. Again, I don't know why you can't do it then on the A7S3. It's got the exact same port.
Well, that's what I mean. If we say, I think we are probably due for an A7 V soon. If that came out and that had timecode to it, that would be for me a no-brainer to upgrade to.
Well, that then, well, it depends what all the features it's got. The A7 V depends what it is, because you have to be careful now, because now over the last 2 or 3 years, they've really developed the FX line in parallel with the S line. I don't know, and I don't know where if the like the S line, like the A7S3, if there's an A7F, if there's even a space now for the A7S4. That seems to be where the FX3 is.
Yeah, I don't. If I had to predict it, I don't think. I think they'll continue with the R and they'll continue with the A7 V. I don't think there is a place for an A7S4. I think. I think at the moment I'm thinking where's the line between the A7 V and the FX3 or any other potential FX4 or anything like that. So when you introduce the A7S3, what will differ it from the FX3? What will be the crucial difference between that? What will be the selling point of an A7S3? Why would anyone buy it over an FX4 potentially?
An A7S4,
Yeah, A7S4.
an A7S4. Yeah, they've kind of changed that now to the FX line. The A7 V might exist, which is almost been like jack of all trades camera. It's good at photography, it's good at video, but not quite as good at each one versus the R or the S. That camera, it can't have cinematic features on it.
Yeah, because then you're encroaching on the FX line. But then would that create a gap in the market for Canon to come in and create that camera that does do that to try and drain sales away from the A7 V? Or would they
Well,
stick with it, do you think, as well, and keep their cinema cameras features off there?
well, they haven't with the R5C. They need an R6. No. They need an R5C2, and that's be better. 6K is a sweet spot, and 8K is so big to mess with in post production. The the only thing I can think of what could happen with the A7 V, it'll probably have more AI features on it,
Yeah.
because there's now a camera. I don't know what it is, what Sony's made. It's known as like the vlog camera, and it follows you around.
Yeah.
It's got different tracking on it, and they do different things now. They do more what in the past would only be possible in post production. And AI, it's getting integrated into everything currently. Otherwise, there is no point for the A7 V, because it's just going to be an A7 IV just bumped up a bit. It's got to have a higher megapixel count on the photo side of it. And if it's going to be a 6K camera, they can only keep it. If they do a 6K camera, it's only they'd have to make the FX4 6K.
Yeah.
Then if they make the FX4 6K, they need an FX7 6K or 8K.
So what I've just looked into then, the camera you were talking about before was the ZVE1, the vlog camera. I've just had a quick look. It looks like that camera does have time code as well.
No way. Is that a full frame camera?
Yeah. So that's one of their non-cinema cameras that does have time code.
So why would that have time code and the A7S3 not have time code?
So that's what I mean. So that's what I thought I'd look into then. Based on that, they are willing to dish out some of the cinema features to the more consumer focused cameras. So maybe we could see an A7 IV that does have time code in the future.
Yeah, maybe. Is it that? I think that's the issue now with camera lines, especially Sony do bring out a lot of cameras. They cannibalize each other.
Yeah.
They need to be careful not to do that. Because if the A7 V started with so many great features, everyone with an FX3 would ditch the FX3
and go to that. Yeah.
And yeah, and then I don't know what did you stagger it and then make the FX4 better. So then you'd leave that and jump to that. I don't know. It's difficult. It's difficult to get that right. And then like you said, there's other cameras now what are meant to be not as professional cameras like the one you just mentioned, and they have features on it what are arguably better than an A7S3.
Well, that's the debate for me at the minute with like, if I want to buy a third camera, do I want to get an FX30 or do I want to get the ZVE1? Because if I get the ZVE1, I lose some of the cinema features, but looking at this, I'd keep time code and I'd have a full frame camera as well, and I'd have the AI features.
There's one, it might be that, what is pretty much the same sensor as the FX. No, sorry, as the A7. Well, yeah, that, but the A7S3.
Yeah.
There's one of them. There's one of them cameras what are not meant to be on the same level, but it's got the same minutes. I can't remember which one it is. I'd have to look at it, but there is one, and then it just gets you thinking. Like you can get like as we are nearly now, you can get lost in it. You get lost in trying to work out what is the best camera, and you just go for again. It's you just have to refer it back to what you do when you're out shooting. You only know this when you're actually out there shooting. You can think it when you're looking online and you're looking at watching different YouTube videos, but it only becomes apparent when you're out there filming and you think, I wish I had this, I wish I had that. Oh, this let me down today. That let me down today. Which I experienced. I had the FS5 and the autofocus was letting me down. So I knew I had to make that change because it just wasn't good enough. And I can watch videos. Yeah, the autofocus not brilliant, but it's okay, it's good. But it's not, in my opinion. It wasn't. It would drift.
Yeah.
And you're talking on like a f2.8. You're not even talking about 1.8 or 1.4, where it's way more shallower. It should have handled it, and it. I think it just because it goes off. It's contrast based autofocus. The old systems, I can't remember what it was, but yeah, it just wasn't good enough. So then I made the change because I need a dependable body, and it wasn't good enough. And the cameras that I use now, FX30, which is pretty much the FX3 in terms of usability, and the FX6, they just do what I want when I want, and I don't have any issue with them. So that's why I really like them cameras, and I can recommend them cameras because and they're really intuitive as well. Where the buttons are, just makes life easy. I'm not faffing through menus and things like that. I find them really good. And again, with to wrap it up, the two cameras that we spoke about, the one last week and this week, they don't, and I don't know for me what features would have to be on a camera to make me like, no, that's the camera for me. Off the top of my head, the only thing I can think about, and I still don't know if I'd even switch, is if they had a camera that was pretty much the FX6, but had XLRs on the body and not 12, 16-bit RAW.
So you wouldn't want a smaller body from that. You're happy with the body size.
Yeah, no. Sometimes I don't like the smaller bodies. I like it where it's heavier and more rigged out and got more button, where it's got a lot more physical buttons on the body where I can quickly access. Again, I'm not messing with menus and things like that. I like the bigger body on it. I do. So no, I really like the FX6 shape and size. No doubt I'd like the C400 as well. I prefer them to the mirrorless cameras. Um, but to have like 16-bit, like the red cameras, that'd be really good. Probably 6K sensor as well, just for cropping and stuff. I still deliver in 4K. Yeah, but again, then the final factor is obviously cost. I wouldn't, if it's going to cost me thousands of pounds to do it, I'd be like, nah, I don't need to spend that money. What I've got now is good enough.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Is the question for you while we're on the kit from before we move over to what is going to be the topic of today? 45 minutes in. Is there any older camera, so older than 5 years, what you would consider buying today?
The A7R3. I think that's a pretty decent beast of a camera. It would fit. It wouldn't be as good as what I've got right now, what I'm working with, but it would fit into my workflow pretty well. You've got 42 megapixel sensor. You've got pretty decent. You've got 8-bit video, but you do have access to Cine 4 picture profile. You can get some really good footage with that. You're getting really high quality footage from the really juiced up 42 megapixel sensor. It's not that great in low light, but for what I do, it's fine. I'm not really in situations where it would bother me too much. It's a really competitive price. I think you can pick them up now for like £800, something like that. So I think I would go with something like that. The only other thing I would consider would maybe be an A7 III, but then you're going back to 24 megapixels again. And then the photography side of things, it would be quite important for me to have 42 over that 24, I think. What would you do?
Um, Again, it depends what I'm doing. The first thing that I get, what's probably over 4 or 5 years old now, is the that Mavic 2 Pro. It's
Yeah.
10-bit, still got good, decent battery life on it. Stabilization's fantastic on it. For a drone. I bet you can pick them up for a good price now. It's the last one I think that had the tripod mode where it's like super steady. Just leave it there and have it like a tripod. There are better drones out there since that, but that does everything that I need. Don't ever think about, oh god, wouldn't it be better if, because that drone still captures some great footage for what I need, and so that's fine. I don't feel the need to upgrade it. I'd go far, but it depended if I was doing like a YouTube based like podcast show kind of thing where I was sat with a couple of guests and then we're all like, we're all talking about whatever the topic was. I'd have 80Ds. I'd go back that far because like I'd deliver in 1080. I'd have it in the can't even remember what picture the best picture profile. I wouldn't shoot it in. Well, it doesn't have log on it, but they wouldn't require a log for it. It's a nice enough picture for YouTube, and I could get them for I don't know 400-500 quid now.
Yeah, they're pretty
So
cheap.
I could get this. This is like, you know what I mean. I could get some kit lenses, something like that, on them for next to nothing. Position them round, and I could have 3 or 4 of them, and they could just be stationary and sit there, and I wouldn't have to. And that could be like a little podcast studio. And then when I delivered for YouTube, which obviously has its own compression on it anyway, just to capture people sat around the room talking about whatever the topic is, I think they do.
You can pick one up for £659, AZD.
Is that new?
Yeah, it's new.
So like, and I bet you now you could get. Bet there's a ton of them sitting on eBay or Facebook Marketplace or something like that.
Yeah.
Second-hand ones, you probably get half the price, probably 300 odd quid. You probably get one now. And they were the little beasts. They hold up. They were solid enough, weren't they? They're easy to use. They were a good little camera for what they are. So again, if I was going out shooting with the clients, I wouldn't use it for that because I'd want more from it now. It doesn't even have log, doesn't even have 4K. But if we just sat around a room having a conversation about something, I'd have no problems with an 80D.
Yeah.
It would make more sense in many ways. Or whatever. Yeah, I'd probably take that over the A7 III. It's not better than the A7 III, but it'd be a good bit cheaper.
Yeah, just looking, the one I was looking at is £950, so extra 300 new for the A7R. So yeah, a bit more
Yeah,
expensive.
yeah. There's so like where people always look forward and obviously towards new tech that's available. I think there's an argument to say sometimes old tech is better suited for the job, primarily because of cost, than what new tech would. I mean, you you think, oh, no, I'm going to have four FX6s or four C400s in there, or four Red Komodo X's. You're spending a fortune. Four Red Komodo X's, you're over 40 grand.
Yeah, it is crazy.
So, for to shoot a YouTube show, were people not interested? They're just interested in the topics, what the people are saying. So it's like this right now. I could easily get by with an 80D.
Yeah, yeah, I could as well because we are only
Um,
shooting in 1080. So
yeah, it's what we do because it's better. It's better for It's better for everything for what we need right now, and it's fine. Um, so yeah, I go again. I think people should really consider what they don't always get the best and brightest new bit of tech that's out there, because this might be something that's more suitable because it's going to save you a ton in the pocket.
yeah, and then you can reinvest that money into something else, or you can save it, do whatever you want with it, reinvest it.
You could have a podcast, right, with one camera, with two people in shot sat side by side. That's your whole podcast, with a better camera. Or you could, for the same price, you could have three. We could have one on the subject, one on the other subject, and a wider shot, and cut between the three, and it makes it far more visually stimulating. And it's cost you exactly the same price.
I think with podcasts and stuff, people are way more likely to put up with worse visuals if the audio's good than the other way around. If we were
Yeah.
both using scratch audio right now, no one would listen to 10 seconds of this because people don't put up with it because the podcast is primarily there to be listened to. You're not really like watching us sit here for an hour and a half. Just we're not really doing much, are we? But if you don't have good audio, how are you going to progress with that?
Yeah, exactly. It's a discussion. What we do is this a discussion show. It's listen to the discussions. We talk about things that are apparent to people working in any kind of camera industry. Um, we're not going really for it. It just sits on YouTube, so you can see it. It's got the visual, but it is the discussion really what we're prioritizing. So yeah, again, so back to 80D. I mean, you could probably go further back. I don't know what a 650. I don't know the capabilities of like a 650D. Can't remember, but I know what an 80D can do.
Well, I had
Or a
originally.
90D
I think I
or
had
an
a.
80D.
I think we had. I think when I was in college, I had a 750D, and that could do 1080p. It did a pretty good job. I remember the 80D was
Was
quite
it
a
not a
jump.
650? Was it not
650,
650?
650 was the one that we had in college, and the one that I bought was a 750.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're all right. They're like for something like a podcast, things like that. They're honestly, I believe they're all right. I think people put too much emphasis and things on things that they actually don't need to. If you've got a shed load of money and you wanna make a really unbelievable studio and you feel that you need to have the best cameras going, then all right, go for it. But I wouldn't.
And that camera we were talking about just then for American viewers is the Rebel 7T. Yeah, because they have a different naming structure for some reason. The 80D I think is the same though in the US. Yeah.
Yeah, that great little camera, you know. And if you're starting off in video production or photography, you just want to get to grips with things, but you're not willing to invest a pile of money in it because you don't know if you're going to like it or where it's going to take you. Again, you don't need to be splashing. It's like if your first car was like a really really nice car, like people usually have lesser cars. These are younger, but when they first learn to drive, guess you ding it up.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah,
Mm,
it's got a lot of great things. Like you can take photos at 6,000 by 4,000 resolution, which is pretty good. So that's higher than 4K.
yeah,
It's got good autofocus. It's APS-C. That's the only downside there. 24 megapixels. So it's not going to be great in low light, but you're filming a podcast, you can always put lights in
yeah,
there and stuff. There's ways around that, and it's really cheap.
yeah. Yeah, in a podcast environment, everything's probably static. You're not asking for a lot from the camera, so you don't need a lot from the camera. That's the way I think of it. So anyway, that was we've gone in depth, reverting back to the Nikon um, Z6, Z6 Mark III, and we've kind of looked at it in different categories and if it would fit our workflow and stuff. Yeah, it would probably fit your workflow more than mine, but I could certainly use it. But again, I revert back to the same answer, probably the same for you. There's not enough about it where I'd actually go out and buy it.
It's a huge effort to change systems and move over to a completely new system. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of education, it's a lot of risk as well when you're going out on these shoots and you're testing it out for the first time. So it's got to have a lot of pull to get you there, and it doesn't really do it for me, to be honest. I think if I was new and I was just coming into this game and I had some cash to spare, maybe I'd consider it, but at the minute I think I'm going to stick where I am.
Yeah, I agree. It's not enough. So, next topic, something that's quite controversial. Um, but it's all opinion based because that's what it is. It's my opinion, your opinion on different things, but it's about awards. And I see quite often on, I'm not going to mention any names or anything like that. I don't want to do that. It's more the point of it rather than reverting to actual individuals. Award-winning director might be next to the name on the LinkedIn profile, or award-winning documentary or whatever it might be. And it sounds good, and it has a fair amount of gravitas to say you're an award winner. It's to kind of signify that you're that good, you beat so many people to take that award and become the best in that set of rules for that award system. But when you watch that documentary or you watch the award show itself, or if you look at the nitty gritty of what happened in the process of them getting that award, it's not always what meets the eye.
Well, I've got an opinion on this. I get contacted quite a lot by different people, some from the UK, some from Canada. It's all the same story from what I've experienced, where I'm asked to enter my wedding films into awards, and then you click into it and have a look, and there's like a hefty fee to be involved in the process, and then I am instantly turned off by that because it's suddenly not it's not based on merit or talent. It's based on pay to win and who will enter this award system. And then when you watch a lot of the films that get selected and win a lot of these awards, you see that these are some questionable choices. And I'm not saying this about every awards festival because I went to, have you heard of Clermont-Ferrand in France? It's a film festival out there. I went there a couple of years ago, I believe in 2018. I was there and I saw some amazing films and stuff there. And say there's and like what is it? There's a few different award systems and stuff, and a lot of them are reputable. But a lot of the ones that I've been in contact with and that have spoken to me, a lot of the time, it's about paying for a feature. You get this in a lot of wedding magazines as well, where people will pay for double page spreads and stuff, and then they'll say, I've been featured by this magazine and stuff. And what that usually means is I've just paid for an ad. So that's my opinion on that.
Yeah, I've been in the exact same boat numerous times, and if you've never seen it before, you get excited. Whoa, someone's contacting me, like, potentially can win an award. This is really, really good. It's great recognition for me. It's going to be great for my brand. It's going to set me aside. But then you realise there's entry fees. There's other stipulations that go along with it, what aren't necessarily equating to your talent or ability or the strength of your production. They're relating to how much money you're willing to throw at it, which completely and utterly goes against everything that it should be for. On another side of it, we went to an awards show, a documentary awards show last year in England, and it was a really nice event. It was in like an old kind of cinema, and there was a lot of people around who came to watch it. It was a really nice vibe, actually. I did like that about it. So everything was really, really good, and obviously we went together. And then the movie started, and I felt like, I'm going to be honest right now, I felt like I was in a cult, but I was an outsider, and I was like, "What the f is going on?"
I remember as we looked at each other, didn't we? It was kind of a look of, am I going crazy, or is this actually what this is, and stuff. And I remember it was the films were playing and stuff, and you kind of watching it, and I remember thinking to myself that this isn't like the standard's not that high for this. There's a lot of basic mistakes that are going into these films, and a lot of more so than the technical mistakes, because there was a lot of technical mistakes that we did notice when we were watching these films, but there were a lot of ideas that were sort of done to death. You know what I mean? There's a lot of very similar themes coming up, and I've seen it before, and I've seen it done better and stuff. And I remember thinking to myself, could anyone not think of anything new to say about these topics? Because you're watching these films and stuff, and it's all the same opinion on things and stuff, and you're never sort of challenged. It's always a very easy to watch kind of thing. You're never like emotionally gripped or engaged in the way we remember when we first started the podcast, when we were talking about like Baby Reindeer, and it's more nuanced and it's more colourful about its themes and its topics, whereas it's very much like this bad, this good. And that was kind of what I got from when we were watching those films.
I like, people don't know my background. I've taught media and film, so I've worked with students from 16 through probably to their early 20s. So I've kind of got a grasp of where younger people are who are just starting out in the careers, and my expectations aren't necessarily high because I'm fully aware of where they're either starting out. This was some of the films that they were doing at 16 were way better than what I was watching that day, and there was some things that I just when I don't, again, I've got to be careful what I say, but they were really bad. They were awful. They were awful on every metric. And then after it, there was a round of applause. Cool, people being polite. It would have been probably a little bit harsh if everyone had sat silent, shaking heads. And then obviously they get the filmmaker up there, and then the crowd asks them questions. And the crowd, this is again where I thought I was going crazy. They were championing and saying like, it was really great, that shot you did there. What you're trying to do, it was more, and the fact that it was nothing was in focus. Mark? What you're trying to say with that? It's like, no, there's nothing. Just messed it up.
Yeah, I remember that. Clearly, that shot that they were talking about in that segment was clearly just soft, where they'd not focus properly.
There was, yeah, it was. There was other things, the framing, and then it didn't make sense. The message didn't come across. There was no the tools that you have with the lighting and the framing and the mise en scène, and then how you put them ingredients together in the edit to create and the message that you want to create to tell that story. None of it was there. And to be honest, I'm just going to say it. The people who were doing the awards show, I've seen their work, and they're the one. They're in the driving seat. They're the champions of this little event. It's not good enough, and I hate to say it. There's not enough. There's not a big enough voice out there for whatever it might, probably political reasons, to say, I'm sorry, this is not good enough. If this is not the standard people should be at, they should not be awarded for what they're making. But yet you guys are awarding it and giving a prize fund.
I think that the heart of the issue, what we're talking about here, is at what point are people not necessarily taking ownership of mistakes they've made and they're trying to pass it off as creative decisions. That was what I was getting a lot from that event, where they were talking about certain things that they'd done, and I'm watching it from a common sense point of view, thinking, no, you just made that mistake, and now you're trying to say that I was trying to say something with that retrospectively. And I think in our industry, everyone's sort of really nice to each other about things, and I'm not saying you have to be horrible about things, but I think getting honest feedback about your work and not being deluded about it is one of the fastest and most effective ways that you can grow. And I've got a good example of this from when me and you shot a couple of years ago, and we were doing a video in the north of England. I remember I messed up this one shot, this interview shot, and I was trying to make excuses about it, and you gave me a real grilling over it. I remember at the time I was so frustrated about that, and we had a bit of a spat over it.
You've never let this down. You've never forgot this, have you?
No, we had a real like falling out over it. And it's only retrospectively that I've looked back and thought, no, David was helping me. I got into like in my head, you were the bad guy. You get because I've been used to this environment of university that I'd gone to when I'd left college, and everyone sort of gaslights each other with like, oh yeah, you're brilliant, you're doing this and you're doing that, you know what I mean? And you're in this echo chamber of constant reassurance where no one's kind of calling you out. At least that was my experience at university, and it's not as rough of a ride as what our relationship was in college, where I remember you would call things out if it wasn't done properly and stuff, and there was no kind of excuse making. And I think I got a taste of that when we did that shoot together. And looking back on it, I haven't really done anything like that again, because that is so pungent in my memory of what you said to me and how we sort of moved past it and stuff now. And I think it's one of the most important things to hear.
No, it's good. It's good. And like, there's in that situation and other situations as well, it's tough. It's tough to be you risk friendships, you risk coming across like the bad guy, like you said, you risk you jumping into potential argument territory. We could fall out and all these different things. It's not. It'd be very easy for me to say, "Oh yeah, don't worry about it," and then just walk away from it, and like nothing happened. But I would have been doing both of us a disservice. Me to accept it when I know it's not acceptable, and for you to think, and then for me to, by not challenging it, give the impression like it is acceptable. So then it's all about, and I don't know if you can relate it back to the award show or anything like that. Yeah, there is the standards in everything. If you're gonna, if you say you're going to deliver something for a certain time, you deliver it. If you're going to do this, you do it. You stand by your word. That's one element of standards. And the other one is your work. I'd sooner somebody come to me and say, You know what, David, like, I don't know what happened, but like, because I've done mistakes, everybody has. I've made a meal of it. I thought it was in focus and it wasn't. That shot's gone. And own up to it. At least I know that person then recognizes. Um, I respect them for fronting up, um, and recognizes that it's wrong, and then I'm like, right, okay, let's fix it. That's half the recognizing character is how somebody deals with failure, more so than they deal with success, and then they look at it and say like, yeah. And if more you take ownership of it, truly take ownership of it, you'll just get better. You'll just get better because you're constantly setting standards, and that's just life. I mean, if you look at good sporting teams, the ones who win the trophies, the standards are so high that it's painful at times
Yeah.
to try and stick it. But yeah, that's why they are the best. That's why they win, because they uphold themselves to standards. And we all, every now and then, well, hopefully unintentionally, the standards can drop, and you think, I screwed that up, and I can still screw something up, but it's not about that. It's about how I deal with it.
No, I agree, and I
So
think
yeah,
I think there needs to be a sort of line drawn between. I think it's very easy in our industry to say like, oh, everything's creative, and there's no kind of standards. You can do whatever you want, but I think people making genuine mistakes and stuff and messing up focus and stuff, and then they go on to say that it's subverting expectations, or I'm changing things up, or I'm doing it differently. I think you've got to really measure whether you have intentionally done that and broken rules. Because, say for example, when Martin Scorsese does it in The Wolf of Wall Street, when Leonardo DiCaprio addresses the audience consciously and stuff, that's more like an artistic choice to break those walls and break the rules of filmmaking. Whereas I see a lot of people now using that as more of an excuse for sloppy filmmaking and doing things a bit more sloppily than they should be doing.
it's so clever at times. Like it's The Shining, and with Kubrick, and at one point the carpet was patterned, and on the reverse shot he got them to literally move the carpet around, so the pattern moved. So when it jumped between shots, shot the carpet like twit moved,
Yeah,
and that was because it's that in that genre of film, he wants you to be unnerved and uneasy,
yeah,
and your brain might not be recognizing there's something different, but it knows something different, and it's making you feel uneasy. Um, Little things like that. That's technical brilliance to try, because you've got an effect that you're working towards that, and I love that in any kind of filmmaking. But what I saw there was people championing films that were clearly not good enough.
Yeah.
Not on any level. Not for a 16-year-old who's just had a camera for 5 weeks. They weren't good enough, and the fact that they were champion owned and they were under this banner of oh, it's art, it's creative. It was just it's just bullshit. And no matter if you're paying for it, like it's hard to know what metric you should stand by to know if your work is any good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there are certain like technical guidelines that you should be adhering to unless you are intentionally breaking those walls. And then like we were saying, that award show, they did definitely, it was more about excuse making from what I could see. And then obviously the more worrying bit was after, when we were sat there watching everyone talking about how great it was and asking questions. It was like, have you ever heard of Emperor's New Clothes?
Yeah,
It was like that, where I was thinking to myself, does everyone else know that this is bad and we're all pretending that it's not bad? That's what I was thinking.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. It was. That's why to me it was like they're all in a cult. They're all brainwashed. They all believe and they've all told themselves that what they're seeing is good, and and it wasn't, and it wasn't. Everything about it was um. And I don't, the people who put it on, I don't mind them. They're nice people, and and I like them. It's not about them personally, but I think they, I think they facilitated something in the wrong direction. I admit, if I'd have been asked that night, no one asked me point blank, what did I think? As far as I know, anyway. But it'd have been, I'd have chose my words carefully because I wasn't gonna lie and say it was brilliant because it was the opposite. And if they ever, yeah, because I think it's important sometimes to just try and raise standards about what we should be watching, and I was disappointed in that. So if it's between something like that and also something that you got to pay for, you've really got to ask yourself like, what is the value in this?
I don't remember, did we pay entry for that?
I can't remember. Yeah, I think so. I think I bought the tickets,
Yeah. So there you go.
but
Is
I
that
can't
is
remember.
what you watched that day worth the entry ticket for that?
No, no, no. It was. It's always interesting to get that shared experience, sit in the room with the filmmakers, to get their opinion, get and having conversations with people who are working in the same kind of fields as what you are. So it was like I was looking forward to going really, but bit disappointed. I suppose if you have clients, the clients love your work, um, that's a metric to be happy with because they're willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
If somebody's not willing to pay for it after they've seen it, or they're not willing to pay for who you are and what you can do, um, then maybe it's no good. Because if people want your work, um, they'll show you by paying for it.
No, I definitely agree. I agree with that.
I, I think that's a safe metric rather than awards. So to leave it on that note, because we've been speaking a while, to summarize what we spoke about today, choose your cameras wisely. You don't need the best and brightest new thing. There's nothing wrong with buying old technology, and be careful with awards show because and also awards and people on their profiles that talk about being award winning, because when you look at it a little bit deeper than the surface, you begin to realize it's not all cracked up
And I think
as it's meant to be.
I think what I would say to that is as well, what's the aim of you going into this award show? Are you trying to get more clients? Because you got to think about who these awards are going to be shown to, especially in the wedding industry. If you're paying for a double page print, I would say your money's best spent on advertising in other places because you can't control who's going to see that ad. I mean, you're going to be pushed out to people who maybe not your ideal clients, as we spoke about, I think 2 episodes ago, about the real estate client that you had. You're just pushing yourself out there to anyone. There's no way to control that. So even from a financial point of view and from an advertising point of view, it might not be worth your time doing as well.
Absolutely. If you're a wedding videographer, your clients are people getting married.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
it.
So
That's it. Right, Tom. Good chat as always. And I will catch up with you next week on the camera guys.
let's see you there.